Show me that little grin of yours. That's the one. Where's that been? Like
hiding.
Where's it been hiding all these
I'm
years?
an unhappy person.
What are you unhappy about?
My golf.
Oh, get on. Right guys, Dan Hendriksen here at Torquay Golf Club. We have got the new Titleist SM8 wedges with us today. We have the expert that's come in, Ben Hiscock's going to come in and talk to us about the features and benefits of these wedges, how they've maybe changed from the SM7. I also have Will Farley, who is my trainee here at Torquay. He's looking at moving away from the SM7 and upgrading into the SM8. So we thought we'd just blend this whole video together with a small review of the products, but also look at fitting Will into some new wedges. Let's have a chat with the boys. Right, Will Farley. We have Will Farley. Third year, second year trainee now? Third year trainee, going into his third year with the PGA. Very good golfer. Will's been playing and succeeding quite nicely in PGA events. You've now been playing the SM7 for what, 2 years?
A year. I struggle with distance control, if anything, and maybe chipping with the 56 and the 50. Okay,
but you were fitted into these wedges about a year ago, were you? Okay, and who fit you?
You.
This could be awkward. Right, okay, so which club is it that you're possibly struggling with a little bit in the SM7?
56, I'd say.
56?
I think it's got too much bounce. I'd say when I hit a full shot, it's a bit too floaty, no penetration.
Why did we put you into the 56 with 14 bounce?
It was more the fact that I like chipping my 62, so it's a different option when you have different grounds, conditions, etc. with the bounce. It could help you. Okay, your 62's got what bounce? 8.
8, and then we got you into a 14, which I suppose for fuller shots and maybe chipping around the greens, having a bit more bounce is always favourable. But you said that you're possibly struggling, maybe in the season time more so than in the winter time, would you say?
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
And we also have Ben in the house. Ben, hello, welcome back to Torquay, mate.
How you doing, guys?
Always a pleasure to have you back in.
Always a pleasure.
You've brought some new toys with you.
I most certainly have. Yeah, SM8, fresh off the press.
Give me some ideas as to what these clubs, how they differ from SM7 and like SM6 and SM7 really, isn't it?
Well, I was going to start with SM6 because that was when the progressive centre of gravity was actually brought in. Remember, that was quite revolutionary. Kind of aligning the centre of gravity for each loft. So if you look at these, for example, look at the variable hosel length. Got a 46 in my right hand. And a lob wedge there, so massive difference in hosel length. And that's drawing the CG high and low, displacing weight in the right place. So it'd be interesting when we fit Will in a moment, because he said he's struggling to control distances a little bit from his it might be a loft issue, but from his current gap wedge to his sand iron. So that'll be a big part of it. The main changes are actually in the 58 degree lofts and above. So, in order to explain this with ease, I've got a K grind SM7 58 degree here, and I've got exactly the same. You can see there for the camera, they are the same grinds and lofts.
Okay.
But what you'll notice in the SM7 is that we've still got a nice long hosel length.
Yeah.
And actually there's a little bit of extra, a couple of mil on the SM8 here, but also in the SM7 we've got this weight pad. And that was helping,
like a small bulge that
you can see
comes over the back there,
yeah, so that has now been taken away,
because this was to do with centre of gravity, wasn't it?
It was. So as you can appreciate from there, as we draw the CG high by using the hosel length and the weight pad here, brilliant. But as you add loft, that CG is going that way.
So up that way, you mean higher on the face?
Well, further away from where you might strike it.
Okay.
As well, so the player feedback from the PGA European Tour and the players that Bob and his team work with, they said they would occasionally get like a slow poppy one, essentially from whether that's pitching with a high lofted golf club. So
for those people that don't know what slow and poppy means, what does that really mean? What are they flight wise? What are they seeing?
So higher and going to come up a little bit short.
Okay, so just stalling a bit on them.
Basically, yeah. Like a lot of better players want to see that slightly lower trajectory. Feels a sense of a little bit more control coming into the green.
And that's even more with a lob wedge?
Yeah, I mean, how would you kind of comment on that with your own game, Dan? Like if you're 50, 60 yards away and you've got a bit of a tight pin, how would you see that that ball getting into the flag.
So for me with a lob wedge, so I use a 60-degree lob wedge and I use a 56-degree. So my 56-degree is more for fuller shots, chipping and pitching, whereas my lob wedge, you'll very rarely see me use a lob wedge for a full shot.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because of what you're saying, because I do tend to get the ball that pops high on the face and it doesn't really go forward, it just kind of goes up in the air.
Yeah.
That's why I very, very rarely use a lob wedge for a full shot. You're saying then with SM8 that it's going to give me a better opportunity to hit lob wedges from more fuller shots rather than see them jump up in the air and float a little bit too much for me.
Yeah, essentially what we've done is we've got a tungsten kind of weight low in the toe, and we've put an extra couple of mil on the hosel, which keeps the CG high, but then because of the location here brings it forward.
At the end of the day it comes down to a feel with the player, so let's
let's hit some shots,
see what Will's going to do now. So we will be heading out shortly to the short game area just to sort of get some ideas on what bounces and grinds that Will's going to go into. But for now, what we're going to try and do is just look at some of his gapping between his pitching wedge and then the 3 other wedges that he's got in his bag. Let's see him hit a few shots. So you've already spotted something, haven't you?
Always start a wedge fit with a bit of a debrief, because Will's a really good player as well. Here's yardages that he's got in his little notebook. They're going to be pretty reflective of the amount of golf that he plays, tournament golf. They're going to be accurate, right? And we're just confirming Will's kind of dilemma at the moment, because the gap between Will's pitch and wedge and his 50, so between the pitch and wedge and the 50, gap's pretty good.
Yeah.
Quite happy with that. From there, what's kind of been highlighted on the GC2 here as well, that the gap between the 50 and the 56, which to be fair is a slightly larger gap of 6 degrees. It's not often we go outside a 6-degree separation where that is going to be slightly baggier than the gap that you've got at the moment. And if that's causing you a couple of issues on the golf course, then it's not a difficult fix to change the loft. It's just then whether that, when we get outside in a moment, whether that loft can get you into the right grind. So at the moment, Will, your wedge was averaging 142, and your 50-degree was 127. And do you feel that that's pretty gameable on the golf course as well?
Yeah.
You kind of got your yardages in between that as well?
Yeah, I like that, and then I can little knock down ones if I need to.
And then from 127 average, it goes down to 106. So 21-yard gap.
And that's from 50 to 56?
Yeah. And you know what, normally I'd quote for a lot of players, I'd say 4 degrees is probably close to about 10 yards of separation. 6 degrees is probably closer to 15, but that can be player dependent as well. And if you're seeing quite a large gap in the golf course, you've just proven it there that 21 yards is probably slightly on the high side, isn't it? So if we can tidy that up a little bit, that's going to hopefully give you a tighter range of yardages on the course, isn't it?
The only issue I see here though is that he loves his 62-degree wedge.
I thought you might say that, yeah.
You know, I think when we probably did the gap before, when we did the fitting, we saw obviously that we tried to get the blend from his 62 to his, then we kind of put in the 56, because were you using a 56 previously or 54?
Yeah, so I went 50, 56, 64 I went before.
Right, okay. 64?
Yeah.
Okay, so we moved you back down to 62. So are we going to see now a problem opening up with 62 to then, even if you moved him out of that 56, are we going to potentially see a slight issue there? Considering it's a club that he loves to use, and he does use it with some very good effect, that 62. Do you use it full shots?
Yeah, full shots. I use it for everything.
Do you?
Yeah.
For me though, the proof in the pudding is that you've gamed him for a whole year and you're telling me that you've got a slight problem. So for me, if we can still have the versatility of the 62 and keep that in the bag, if it just means that we squeeze up and get you slightly better top line yardages, and provided that 54, maybe we can absorb a bit of the tolerance that we have in terms of bending. So we have still got 2 degrees there, so that opens up kind of an in-between gap of maybe 55 degrees possibly. That might be a good compromise, but then we just got to make sure that that is versatile enough for you to hit all the shots that you need to hit. That's the most important thing.
Ben, what have you got him into now then, from a gapping point of view?
Like for like, 54 degree F grind, just to get some, this is exactly the same grind that Will currently uses in his SM7, just to get some numbers to see if we can tidy up that yardage gap.
Okay, results are in. Let's have a little look.
So that was an absolutely ideal test, really. So even on one of the early shots, Will said, caught that bit heavy, take it out. But we didn't, we kept it in, because even that one, we've got 4 shots that are only within a yard or so of each other, and that has pulled the average of the 56 of 106 yards through the air up to 111. For us, that closes the gap by 16 yards instead of 21.
Yeah, it's much better, isn't it?
It's kind of what you're looking for, isn't it?
More playable, definitely.
How's that feeling in here? Are you noticing anything different in the launch off the face? Are you feeling anything more solid, less solid?
I'd say compared to my 56, this one goes, the launch is slightly lower. But
you mentioned something earlier as an option, didn't you?
Yeah. So maybe going to like 5 wedges, so getting rid of my 3 wood, maybe making my hybrid a bit stronger and my 4-iron stronger to have more wedges, more different options down the bottom end of my bag.
I think for a lot of good players, Will is going to play a variety of different golf courses throughout the season. I've probably got 15 or 16 clubs in rotation. Call upon them when you need them. So on the shorter courses where you might, you know, I know you pull the trigger with the driver a lot, don't you? You're quite an aggressive player. Will hits it a long way, so at sometimes you might not need a 3-wood, or you know, you talked about maybe strengthening your hybrid to allow the 3-wood to come out to then put another wedge in. I think if you've got a few clubs in rotation, you can call upon them when necessary.
Definitely, yeah.
So that's quite an interesting comment that's come out of what Will is saying there. Maybe having 5 wedges in the bag and then losing something at the top end. Will's obviously a very strong player, hits it a long way, so he gives him the options to possibly do that. For me, individually, I carry a pitching wedge 56 and 60, and I just feel that I need a little bit more sort of timber up the top end than I do certainly down the bottom end. For me, I feel like I can manipulate the wedges a little bit more. That's what I want to know from Will. Are you more confident of, let's say, hitting a knockdown wedge or easing off a wedge than, let's say, easing off a 4-iron or a hybrid or even a 3-wood?
I'd say definitely wedge.
Slightly concerned when Will talks to me about 5 wedges. That's a lot of wedges in the bag, and I just think that for the quality of player that he is, him being in something that he can manipulate, and I think he's going to manipulate a wedge better than he is a 4-iron or a 3-iron or whatever else he carries at the top end. Yeah,
I think you're dead right there. At higher speeds, it's probably harder to take a few yards off than it is to really feel a slightly softer shot, isn't it? And I've played with you before as well, and he's pretty handy around the greens. I think it's dependent on how good this middle sand iron can be. If we can get that nice and versatile out on the short game area, I think probably jobs are good in there.
Right, Ben, we've come outside. We've just set Will up to hit a few shots so he can get a feel of that 54 degree, have a few chip shots, give him a couple of different grinds. And whilst we're talking about grinds, can you just sort of share with us the grinds for this year in the SM8 range?
I certainly can. So to simplify it a little bit, there are 6 grinds, but actually from 46 to 52, it's just 1 grind. F is essentially a full sole, so regardless of what irons you play, if they're Titleist or if they're not Titleist, it's just a lovely full sole. And if I put it up against a T100, for example, you can see it's a pretty similar shape, kind of conducive to full shots. In 54 degree, we do F grind, D grind, and S grind, of which I'll just show you an S grind here. So much like the F grind, it's a pretty full sole with just that trailing edge relief there. So really good for linear techniques where you might control the loft through shaft lean or just changing ball position, shallowing out or a bit steeper. So I'm going to talk about these 3 at the same time. So we've got L grind, M grind and D grind, and actually in that order you can see closely that they're a really similar shape. They're a crescent shape. So heel and toe relief in this nice crescent shape around there, and we've got all of those 3 in a really similar shape but just different amounts of bounce. The one I haven't mentioned now is K grind. So that is the widest sole we have, and it's also got lots of bounce. It's like a cheating stick out of the bunker, really. Really good for straight face shots, and then as you kind of rotate the face or lean the shaft backwards or play a bunker shot, you can look at all that lovely bounce there that's going to resist the ground.
And to summarise, I mean, this is talking more about bounce now, but like, how did these people that are watching this video, how do they know what kind of bounce they need to be in?
So if you go onto our Titleist website, we do have a wedge selector tool that asks you a few questions to give you a bit of a guide. If you can't come and see product specialists like myself up and down the UK, or come and see someone like Dan at a fitting location, then that's the best bet. Otherwise, testing it, it's got to be the best route.
Which is what we're doing with Will. So let's now head over to Will and just see how he's getting on with that 54-degree wedge. Will, how's that feeling? You've hit quite a few 54s now, so how's that feeling compared to the 56?
I'd say like chipping wise, the loft that comes in a bit lower, it's a bit nicer, the ball's a bit lower down, it's a nice bit of check.
So you feel like you're pushing the ball forward a little bit more,
yeah,
rather
definitely.
than it jumping up in the air?
Yeah, definitely chipping. And you don't have the one that stops dead on the green. So the spin's quite consistent, I'd say. Okay,
so what have you done now? You've just changed the club, so have you changed the grind now?
Yeah.
So 54 you're kind of happy with?
Yeah, certainly the dry data inside produced the right numbers that we were after. And I've just given Will a different option now to see whether that can hear the difference, can't you, straight away? Just seeing whether it's any preference to basically get a different club in his hands, really.
So you just said there you can hear the difference. What are you listening for?
So certainly off this wet condition, almost want that kind of sort of clicky noise. Yeah. And that's where the contact ultimately between the club and the ball is nice and crisp. So like, that was nice sound. What are you seeing differently here, Will, as well?
I'd say the
more
ball's
importantly
definitely going lower.
Okay.
So it's a lot lower.
What, lower from the 54 you were using a minute ago to the 54 that you're using now?
Yeah, definitely. Like the ball flight's definitely lower, I'd say. It's going in a bit lower, a little bit less spin, it's rolling out a little bit more.
Should he be seeing that?
Listening to what you were, the difference in the strike, I preferred the previous one because when you were pitching, when Dan was filming you up there, the flight was just more similar. Your stock shot to that back flag, sound, flight and release was much more similar, where you can even see there slightly higher ball flight, release more, and the flight's differed more, hasn't it? Not necessarily something that you're after. If you're actively playing different shots here and you're looking for a different reaction, great, but if you're just playing a stock shot and that ball is coming off a slightly different part of the club face because you're not controlling the lowest point of the swing quite as well, then for me, I prefer the previous grind.
Okay, and should he see a difference in flight with more bounce or less bounce?
If the bounce is different, it's going to generate a slightly different strike. Typically what you'll see is as the bounce or the bottom of the golf club is resisting the ground, that should lower the strike a little bit. And you'll see that kind of, you know, when you described a low spinny shot, when you're hitting with that 54F grind a minute ago, that is exactly the sort of ball flight I would expect. That's really good.
So Will, you like, where are we? Ben, where are we?
So from my perspective, and we can do this together, but we've tidied up your yardage gap.
Definitely,
that you're after.
Yeah.
Interestingly, once we changed the loft, I think your striking has been more consistent anyway, but we've actually kept you in the same grind. And as Dan was kind of suggesting a moment ago, pretty happy with the 50. That was doing its job nicely.
Yeah, I like the 50.
It's doing its job on the golf course too.
Definitely, yeah.
Happy with the 62. So there, with the amount of golf that you play, having used those wedges for a good year or so, you're going to see a little bit more performance. And when I say performance, I am kind of relating to the the kind of the degradation of the groove. So you're gonna produce a little bit more spin with a fresher groove. That might just help you on those slightly tight pins.
Definitely, yeah.
At the end of the day, Ben is trying to sell you new wedges, Will.
That's not true. That's not true.
He's trying to sell you new wedges, but at the end, like, as far as I can see, what would be the point in you moving away? I mean, at the end of the day, you're happy with your 50, you're happy with your 62. Really, there's only one club here that we need to change. What's the point in you now upgrading to the full set of SM8? Why don't you just keep the SM7 in the 50 and the 62 and just change out the 56?
I feel that having them for a year, there's wear in the wedges, so I'd say almost refresh the wedges altogether, so the spin relates to how new the wedges are.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, you playing for money, I suppose you want as good as you can get.
Definitely, yeah.
Fresher grooves that you practice a lot, so you know, new wedges gives you a sort of bit more confidence, maybe?
Definitely, yeah. And it's always nice to have a shiny toy, isn't it?
So just to kind of summarise what's kind of gone on here today, obviously we've seen a change in what's happening with the SM7 to the SM8. For Will, I think it's really important as a good player, working on his game, competing for money, that he gets himself into wedges that he's going to be confident with. Moving away from a 56 to a 54 is just helping his ball flight, which I think is just sort of working into his game a little bit better. And obviously from Ben's point of view, you know, Ben's not a salesman, he's a fitter, so he's not trying to sell anything to Will there, it's more of a joke. But from your point of view down there, you know, if you're not practicing as much as what, let's say, Will does, you don't necessarily always need to change out all your wedges. However, I understand that people like nice new things. For me, I didn't really like the fact that Will was looking to maybe play with 5 wedges, and the reason for that is there's a lot of confusion. He's a very, very good chipper and pitcher of the ball. He can manipulate those wedges, I think, better than what he's going to manipulate the higher end of the golf bag. But obviously that's for him to decide, as he's a very good player for himself. So there you have the SM8. Good product. I need to go and have a little hit with them now. Let me know, put your comments down below. Have you tested the SM8? I'd like to hear what you have to say about them. Are you feeling a difference maybe from SM6 or SM7 into SM8? I'd like to hear what you have to say. Don't forget, if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell if you want some more notifications of videos coming your way, and give us a thumbs up if you like what you're seeing. I look forward to catching up with you again soon.